Part two, we're going to look at how energy is passed from one organism to another. So let's make up a number. Let's say that um, we have 100,000 kilocalories of energy that came in from the sun. So that's what we're tracking. Now the sun is constantly bringing energy into an ecosystem, and so we're not going to be able to quantify how much that is. So we're just going to follow 100 kilocalories of energy that the sun brought in. Of that energy, the producers are going to take it in first. They're not just going to store it. They're going to use it. And of that energy, on average, we assume that about 90% of it will be used by the producer for whatever the processes the producer needs it for. And so 10% of it will be stored inside of the producer that is available to the next level. Now, energy can neither be created or destroyed. It can only be changed from one form to another. And so once a plant uses its energy, or the energy that it's stored, it turns into heat and it leaves and it releases into the environment. The leftover 10%, which is or from the 100,000 that we started with, would be about 10,000 kilocalories in our scenario, and it's stored and can be available to the next level of the food chain. So here's our next level. They're coming in. They're going to eat the producers and receive some of that energy, which we talked about 10% is available to them. Okay. Now, of that 10%, they are going to use about 90% for their body functions. And that 90% will be turned into heat and will be released and not available anymore to the ecosystem. But 10% will be stored inside of the organism, which of our scenario, that would be 1,000 kilocalories. So we started with 100,000 kilocalories, we went down to 10,000 kilocalories, then we went to 1,000 kilocalories of energy. So we just went through a couple of very um, quick levels in the food chain. So we had the goldfish that went and ate the plant. Then we had that bluefish that went and ate the goldfish, and the same thing. The same rules apply. 90% will be used by the goldfish, 10% will be stored in their body. 90% of whatever they get for the bluefish will be um, used, and 10% will be stored in their body. And then here we have the large, we'll say it's a whale, that just ate the bluefish, and 10% of whatever was in the bluefish is available to the whale. So let's look at this. What have we learned? So first of all, the sun is the source of the energy for an ecosystem, for life. Producers use the sun's energy to make glucose in a process called photosynthesis. Glucose is chemical energy. All organisms rely on producers directly or indirectly for glucose. Now, notice that the bluefish would not have had energy if the plant wouldn't have been eaten by the goldfish. And so whether they eat the plant directly or whether they eat something that ate the plant, it still came from the sun. Energy is passed from one organism to another through consumption or eating, and it can be illustrated as a food chain, as we see here below. Here we have the producer. We're going to call anything that eats a consumer. So we have here our producer, we have the first consumer, the second consumer, and the third consumer here. So we're going to give these names. The first consumer we're going to call the primary consumer. The second consumer we'll call the secondary consumer. And the third consumer we will call the tertiary consumer. That just primary means first, secondary means second, and tertiary means third. as we go through ecosystems, are we only going to find one food chain? And the answer to that is, of course, no. Organisms will eat whatever they can to consume energy and stay alive. So that's the end of part two.